If you've ever tried painting waves in plein air, you'll realize how ridiculously difficult it can be. You'll find yourself knee-deep in absolutely lost and not knowing a single thing to do. So I figured I'll share the 3 most important things that I think you need to know to be able to paint waves outdoors and plein air, and I'll tell you how that relates to my general painting process. I start every single painting in 3 simple ways. First, I draw it out, then I block it in, and then I refine and refine and refine. You'll see that the drawing stage in the time lapse only lasts for a couple of seconds. Within the first minute, I was able to construct the design in my mind of how I wanted to structure the painting. All it took from that point was a few simple, sketchy paint lines to indicate that design. That leads me to the first important thing that is seascape specific, is that you need to have an understanding of what's actually happening in the waves and how waves actually form and crash. And once you have that understanding, you'll be able to design and create a singular moment of the wave and build off of that. And you'll see in my painting, I have already 3 different stages of the wave. In the back, I have the wave cresting, where it becomes a darker color, and then I have the wave actually beginning to break, and the foam is rising up and the wave is beginning to curl, and there's a little bit of shadow cast inside the barrel of that wave. And then in the foreground, I have the wave already broken, it's rushing towards us in a little bit of foam. And so these are 3 different stages of the wave. Early on in the painting, it took maybe a few seconds, maybe a few minutes to design and to actually decide what it's going to be. But once I have that design, once I have that understanding, it's very easy for me to arrange a painting that is well composed and well balanced and hopefully interesting and rhythmic and has some sort of movement. Now this brings me to my second most important thing when it comes to painting seascapes. It ties hand in hand with what's generally my second step of the painting. After I've designed and drawn out my painting, I come to a point where I need to cover my canvas. I need to just put paint down. I need to get rid of the white of the canvas. Even if it's toned canvas, I need to cover all the elements and get the basic structure of it blocked in. How that relates to seascape painting is, in seascape painting, color gradients are essential. And you'll see these color gradients in 2 places. You'll see them in the sky, which is very typical. We know that the sky is warmer on the horizon and it gets more clear, more blue towards the top. It's very obvious during the sunrise and sunset. You get these reds and oranges really low down on the horizon. It's subtle, but it's still there. When it comes to seascape painting, the horizon is warmer, the sky is more blue, more pure, going up. When it comes actually to the sea, you will see that the sea actually reflects the sky. What's happening in the sky directly correlates to what's happening in the water. And so the color gradients of the water, you'll notice that the horizon on the top is generally more blue and it's generally a little bit darker. And the closer the water gets to us, usually goes lighter in value and oftentimes goes a little bit warmer. And this is multifaceted. Partly is because the water is becoming more transparent, it's less deep, partly it's reflecting the surface. Now this brings us to the last point that I have to share. The last important thing that you need to understand when painting seascapes, and plein air in particularly, is you need to understand the properties of water. In particular, water can be either reflective or refractive or transparent. And when you're painting close to the shore and you get foams, foam also behaves in certain properties. Foam is slightly transparent, foam can be slightly reflective, foam can be slightly transparent, foam can be slightly refractive. Now, what I mean by water being transparent, you'll see this often as the water dips up right before the wave breaks and the water crests and dips up. You'll see that the tip of those little mountaintops, it becomes ever so slightly transparent and it becomes ever so slightly refractive. If light is shining on it, it starts to refract that light and it gets this really warm, beautiful glow. And so if the scene that you're painting involves the sun hitting the top or the back of the waves, oftentimes you'll see that in the top of the barrel, there will be a really beautiful glow in the water. And so that's the water refracting the light that's hitting it, and it's also being transparent. Similarly, water is reflective. Foremost, water is often reflecting the sky. The change in value that you see between when the water dips up and when the water is more flat. So right now, above my barrel, you'll see more bluish water versus a darker green. So that darker green is the water coming up and cresting a little bit before it turns into a barrel and it breaks like the rest of the waves. In that case, because of the angle of the water, we're actually seeing the transparency of the water and we're looking into the water. And where the water is blue, that's because the angle of the water is is actually reflecting the sky. And so we're not seeing into the water, we're actually seeing the reflection of the sky in that water. And when it comes to painting foam, foam is water and it has all these qualities, except they're more subtle. Foam is slightly more opaque, but you'll see that foam does reflect the color of the sky. So right now, the flat layer of foam that's rushing towards the breaking wave that's rushing towards in the foreground, that is reflecting the bluish color cast of the sky. But as the foam curls up and the angle of the foam is slightly different and the light that's hitting it is slightly different, because foam is actually also somewhat opaque, it is just fizzy water. It's just the oxygen and the water mixing and creating bubbles that creates foam for the most part. But there is a little bit of value structure to that barrel. There's a little bit of value gradient because the form of the barrel is actually turning up, and so the light is hitting it more directly and it's more illuminating, but it's reflecting less of the sky also. And foam is slightly transparent, especially when you see it breaking. You'll sometimes see slightly through the foam. There'll be all these little tiny droplets. Light can also illuminate foam the same way it can illuminate the backside of a wave, especially if it's being lit from the back. One last thing, if you've stuck around this long, I'll give you a little bonus tip. Now, this is a concept that I think I might be able to take credit for because I've never seen or never necessarily heard anyone explicitly talk about this. It's about the fractal aspect of nature. There are all different sorts of things that are essentially fractal when you look in the natural world. The shoreline, rocks, trees, waves are no different. And specifically, you'll see this, and this will help you add detail and add those small refinements and really pull a painting together into another level. You will see the fractal aspect of waves in most often how the waves crest. So they come and they're little tiny peaks as if they're little tiny mountains. And if you go swimming, you'll notice on those big tiny mountains, there are tons and tons of tiny, smaller mountains. What a fractal is, it's a self-repeating shape. Similarly, a tree is a repeating shape over and over again. The way that its branches off from its trunk, often it can be the same pattern, and because it's self-repeating and self-similar, it's fractal. And waves, they peak, but all waves have tiny little waves on them. You'll see that how there are large rhythms in the large forms of the wave, there are smaller rhythms in the smaller forms of the wave, and they're similar. And that might help you better design the shapes in your painting, create more interesting shapes. And at the end of the day, what I'm trying to do when I'm making a plein air seascape like this is I'm trying to create a moment that in a way never really existed, but at the same time, it's an amalgamation of all the other moments. I'm looking at the weather, I'm looking at the color, I'm seeing what's happening with the water, with the foam, and I'm trying to capture what is happening, and I'm trying to design that into a single moment and hopefully design that into an interesting painting. The biggest challenge of plein air painting is always the fact that what you're seeing is changing right in front of you. If it's only as subtle as the movement of the sun across the sky, slightly changing your shadows over the course of a couple hours, when it comes to seascape painting, it's amplified so much faster as every wave comes and goes in almost the blink of an eye. So I hope after watching this video you are able to understand a little bit more of what you're actually seeing when you're out there on the beach, staring into the ocean and the depthless void. So hopefully next time you go, you'll have a little bit more information to go off of and something new to try, a new way to see or a new way to think about what it is you're doing. But that's all. Thanks for watching, and good luck out there.